Today's topic is communications and transparency, how to gain mental clarity and practical tips on delivery. Today's guest speaker is David Warschawski. He's the CEO of the Warschawski Marketing PR and Branding Agency. He has been quite successful with locations in New York, DC, and Baltimore. He is a visiting professor at Johns Hopkins University and a mindful leader. It's an honor to have you, David. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to talk to you, Heather. It's been a while.
I know it has been. So I'm just going to sit down. We'll talk. I have some questions for you. So to get started, tell us how mindfulness has affected your own ability to lead.
So both meditation and mindfulness have been useful tools for me. First, on the meditation side is I will use meditation when I feel it's necessary or useful to me. And often that comes up when I'm feeling like there's just so much going on and I need to decompress, or when I have a lot of things running through my brain, there's so much noise and I need to quiet that noise. And then I'll use meditation. And what I find is when I come back to that topic, I'm refreshed, I'm clear-headed, and also one of the big benefits is I have a specific plan of attack of what's the goal I want to accomplish, and then I can go to attack it. So that's the meditation side. Mindfulness is really where I focus most of my attention, and primarily from the perspective of living in the moment. And to that end, I have three very favorite sayings that I use all the time, so much so that I actually keep them in the top drawer of my desk. I'll read you these three sayings that really focus and refocus someone on the now as opposed to what's happened in the past or something potentially happening in the future. They are, things are the way they are. Now, what are you going to do about it? Number two is, what's in the past is gone and can't be changed, but what I do now can make a change. And lastly, things are almost never as bad as they seem and almost never as good as you hope. And all three of these sayings help to really refocus me, or when I use them with other people, to allow them to put things in the proper context, and then we can have a useful conversation and a go forward plan. But I will also say that for me personally, part of what mindfulness is about, you need three building blocks. And for me, you can't really practice mindfulness to the fullest extent unless you're eating correctly, you're exercising, and most importantly, getting really good sleep. Now, I will use meditation or mindfulness to help me get that good sleep, but I would say until you have those three building blocks, you'll never be as successful as you can or would like to be as a leader.
Very nice. I like it. So you're taking a holistic approach right there.
Yes.
So next I'm going to ask you to share a couple of examples of how you think mindfulness can be used to cultivate effective communication and transparency in organizations.
Sure. So for me, the first, and we really stress this at our agency, is teach people and empower them to use EQ as opposed to IQ. How do you make the emotional connection with people? That's very important in a business setting, and often people think it's a transactional relationship in business, but that's not true. And if you think about how you create your friendships, nobody makes great friends with someone because they're incredibly smart and make great points on a topic, and there's a little back and forth between you. We make great friends because we connect with them emotionally somehow. So focus, number one, in business on teaching people, empowering people how to use EQ at least as much as IQ. The second thing that's really important to me personally, and we as a company practice, is every year we go away at the beginning of the year to a retreat, and everyone sets their personal goals within the framework of the business, and we set our organizational goals for the year, and they're broken down by month. And they're proactive goals, and our mantra is they need to be concrete, specific, and measurable. And what that means is many people would say, for example, my goal is to be promoted in the coming year. Well, that's neither concrete, specific, or very hard to measure. What we would say is, I want to be promoted to the position of senior director by March 1st, 2021, and I want my salary to be $100,000. That's specific, clear, and measurable, and then everybody can rally around you and help you accomplish that. And that's the second part of that equation is, as an organization, you want to empower people to achieve their goals, and when they do, then you want to help them celebrate it and reward them for it. That's something we really focus on a lot. The last is something that outside of our organization drives me crazy when companies talk about having a mentorship program. Mentorship should be all the time. And as an organization, we focus very much on constant feedback, on trying to help people see when they're doing things great, when there are areas for improvement. Number one, it's fair to do that. Number two is you get people who feel valued, who understand from moment to moment how they can be the best team member that they can be. And lastly, it allows them to gain experiences that they may never get at other organizations. To that end, we'll let our junior team members often sit in, they're non-billable, but we let them sit in on meetings or even review sessions because we want them to see how things are made, how they're thought through, even though they're not required or aren't particularly useful for that conversation. So make it ongoing mentorship, don't make a mentorship program.
Okay, I like everything you're saying. It's very helpful. Are there ways that people can use mindfulness specifically to support any one of these three things that you describe? You talked about emotional intelligence, how to connect with people emotionally. You talked about concrete, specific goal setting, and you spoke about this mentorship model that you all use. Can you link mindfulness to any one or more of those three things?
I think it goes back to what I was talking about earlier, is that ability to have the EQ to allow people to live in the moment and to focus on what it is that they're doing now in order to achieve a specific goal that they've set, and not getting caught up in all the things that happen sometimes for better or for worse in the day, but to focus on what are we doing now, how do we do it as well as we possibly can, and that's always in the context of what are we trying to have accomplished at the end. We're not just doing good work for good work's sake. And we'll often say, we much rather create an ugly ad that creates the business goal that we have than create a beautiful ad that everybody loves, but doesn't get us the business goal.
Got it. So what I hear you saying is that the mindfulness piece helps in a few different ways. It helps us to be present. It helps us to have mental clarity, and it helps us to have the vision to look outside of ourselves, to think about a desired outcome and then work backwards. So
you said it perfectly. Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right. So if you were to leave people with one practice for mindful communication, what would that be?
I can't just give you one. I got two for you.
All right. give me what you got, David.
So the first, I'm going to quote you one of my favorite sayings from my native language, which is Swiss German. It goes, "Es wird nie so heiß gegessen wie kocht," which means in English, it never gets eaten as hot as it's cooked. And I use this all the time for myself and with team members. When you're stewing in it, when you're cooking in the middle of it, it's hot. Well, if you focus on that, it can be very non-useful and just create all kinds of emotional issues that aren't necessary. But if you focus on what it's going to be at the end, and you realize that it will never be served as hot as it's being cooked, it allows people to accomplish really interesting and fantastic results. It gets them away from the drama or the mental anguish of the moment and lets them see there's a way to get to an end result where we all can feel, wow, that's not nearly as hot as when it was cooked. And the second that I'll leave you with, and if I were to quote my mother at some point in this interview, there'd be probably a very disappointed mother, let's just say that. So my mom had a great mantra when I was growing up that, having been in business now for almost 30 years, I can say is 100% on, and goes into the EQ and to the mindfulness approach. Her saying to me was always relationship, relationship, relationship. And what that meant was focus on creating relationships with people. Because if it's transactional, you're not really of value to them and they can dismiss you fairly quickly. But if you focus on creating relationships with people on the emotional level, on the EQ level, not so much on the IQ level. Yes, you need some good IQ in order to be good at EQ. But if you connect with them on the EQ level, those relationships will bear tremendous fruit. And I've had the personal experience where I go out of my way often to make friends and relationships on a personal level with people who at that time have no business benefit to me, but rather I just want to know who they are and how we can connect. And I'm often surprised how 5 or 10 years later, that relationship pays dividends because you took the time to focus on the person, what's important to them, and making the emotional connection as opposed to thinking of business as a transactional relationship.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I would add, even you being here and sharing your knowledge with folks at George Mason University, people who see this video, you're investing your time and sharing something with you. So you never know what will happen in the future. Maybe you can help them through Warschawski, right? So it's an investment. You're investing in this social cause. And
Correct.
okay, so anything else you'd like to add before we close?
I think we covered it nicely.
All right, so if people want to learn more about you, more about your work, more about your company, how do they connect with you?
So the easiest way is go to our website. It's www.thewagency.com. And you'll get to our website. You can see all of our services. You can look up my profile. You can look up work that's been done. But also, I invite people to connect with me through LinkedIn. As I'm doing with this interview, I am often able to help people out when they have a quick question or want to have some input on something, as long as I'm linked in with them. So please reach out to me and make a LinkedIn connection if you think it's useful to you.
Great. Thank you so much, David.
Totally my pleasure, Heather, and it's wonderful to see you again.
Yeah, you too.